All right, let's kick off another edition of Tether Talks. So we'll let everybody start gathering in. And we'll let our guest find us right now. And here he is already, very prompt. We got Drew Newkirk, and I'm really excited to have this conversation today. I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go. So let me just get Drew up here on the stage. Oop, let's try this. Go live. Let's get this going. We got some stuff that we're going to be doing around Enneagram tests, and he actually spent some time down with Addison in Baja, California. Drew,
Oh, what's up?
how you doing, man?
I'm not sure how this is going to go either because I don't
I
even
don't
know.
know. We'll figure something out.
Pump away. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm just going to drink coffee and listen to you talk. I mean, my job's easy. You've actually got to say some shit.
Well, I just really care about if I look good. That's the most important to me.
Well, your hair is on point, to be honest. And like, I was checking out your Instagram. I know you got the chest tat, you got some sleeves, right? Like, you're like, for a therapist, you're a fucking badass. Like, if I walked into your office and it was like first appointment, I was like, is that a chest tattoo poking out at me? I'd be like, who is this guy I'm letting in my head?
I have to overemphasize the tenderness so that I don't come off as this, brute. So hopefully I'll come off a little bit finessey today and feisty today.
All right. Well, no, I want all of you. I want your authentic self here. I want all the good stuff, and I know that when that comes out, we're gonna have a lot of fun together. And so we're live with Drew Newkirk, who's a licensed therapist. You're based out of New York. You met my business partner Addison down in Baja at Chip Conley's MEA, and you guys spent some time together. And you're a big enthusiast. By the way, I went and did my Enneagram test before this because
Do tell.
What?
Do tell. I
know.
want
I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save a little bit of that. I gotta wait for the reveal a little bit.
Okay.
But let's start out. So, like, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, your practice, also what took you down to Baja, and what that week was like for you.
So I went down to Baja because last year I had gone down for the week-long event. And so
Okay.
for those of you that don't know, it's kind of a retreat slash boutique hotel slash psychological exploration retreat place in Baja, California, on the beach. There is bartenders there. There's chef, but then you have to kind of dig deep into your shit,
Yeah.
And last year I went for a week long, which was really intense. And then they offered during COVID sabbatical sessions. So you go as long as 2 weeks, and there's people that were there 6 weeks to 2 months. Those who had the money to do it. So you go and there's classes every day. But what was really cool was the connections that were made between the people, and it was a little bit more relaxed than the week long. You had a lot more time to explore the area, kind of explore yourself too. You go in the garden for a day and not go to a class, and during a week long you couldn't do that. It was just much more intense. So I hung out with Addison a lot at the pool with margaritas, assaulting him with the Enneagram. That's where we really we first met with a mariachi band around us because somebody was celebrating their 75th birthday, and he was new, and there was 20 of us there that had been there the whole time, and he was new that day and no one else was new, and there's this mariachi band coming at him and a 75-year-old man passing him by, and we're all celebrating him. And I just went over to him. I'm like, welcome in,
Yeah. Breathe.
Let's get you a margarita as fast as possible.
Yeah. Let's start to grease the grooves on this
Totally.
Yeah. And he was also the youngest of the individuals there, which was kind of cool for him. And I know he got so much out of like the morning meditations. There was a shaman, and I know he got some words of wisdom and some insight there. And then obviously like building relationships with people like you, with Chip, with another woman that who wrote the book Soulbatical that
Shelley.
we had on for an IGTV live exactly the other week. So I know for him it was a really beautiful experience, and I'm curious, like you went to the intensive, right? What did you find different in the experience that you had this time, and kind of like what was like the lasting thing that you took with you?
As an Enneagram 4, I can get caught up in comparison, in competition.
Okay.
So an Enneagram 4 tends to want to be the most authentic in the room, the most original in the room. I like a lot of attention, but I don't want to force it. So I want you to notice me without me having to play it too much. So there's a certain type of cool to it. There's a certain type of calculated walk and talk that's become my own, but it's there. And I think the people I wanted the most attention from were the leaders, the co-founders. I think that there was something there that I wanted them to maybe draw me in. I'm a therapist. I'm actually invested in restaurants. So I do psychology with a hospitality side hustle. They are hospitality people that do psychology. And I saw this marriage and I'm like, yeah, you guys should be inviting me into things. But what I really got from it was the people who were just around me at the pool were the people that I really connected deeply with, and who have actually taken some of the things that I've wanted to do in my career beyond just the office and have really pushed those to friends that they know to try to get it made. So that was impressive to me, and it was not something I was expecting.
That's great. And would you like to share with us some of these bigger dreams, bigger goals right now? Or like you can say like that's in the works, that's baking, and you can come back on when you have like that big reveal kind of update. And I'll make sure that we're the first place that you come and talk about this on. Like we have to be where you do the reveal, right?
If Addison makes the right connections, he gets whatever he wants. But the short of it is that I'm trying to create a show about how psychology and music work together to heal people. Mm-hmm. So we have our pilot episode and we're really selling it right now. And it's called The Songs That Saved Your Life. So it's about that one song that got you through that hard time. I think with Addison, his song was I Will Wait by Mumford & Sons. And you know, his story as he went through a lot of his struggle, that story intersects with that song and the narrative gets robust. And that, you know, I want to pull that narrative out, but I want to do it with entertainment, with film, where you're getting the goosebumps when you hear what the song is. And our first guest was Run DMC, or not the band, but DMC from Run DMC. Yeah. And his song would just surprise you. Wouldn't be the thing you'd think would come out of a 80s hip hopper who's like the godfather of hip hop. So
Tina Turner, wasn't it?
What's that?
It's Tina Turner, wasn't it?
It's a female 90s ballad singer. So I'll leave it at that because I do want some surprise if this ever gets to network. But you know, Addison's been hustling for me, so he must be an Enneagram too, because you know they start helping people out and they're caregivers, and but they always want something in return, which is why I'm here right now.
Exactly, because he's like here, we're gonna do all of this stuff. So by the way, Instagram Live, you're gonna be doing it next week. Yeah, and you know it's funny that you said like he is like the ultimate giver, and then he also gets what he wants, right? Like he definitely has this way, and like. Nothing. There we go. The two-wing three.
Two-wing three. The two-wing three is an ambitious caregiver, and if they're healthy, they're very successful, and they're usually saving the world in some way. So, you know.
Well, I'm very fortunate to have him as my partner in saving the world as well. And you know, it's funny that you say that about him getting what he wants, because we just did an event on Wednesday night, and it was our holiday We Fuck With Feelings community event, and he got Zach Williams, right, Robin Williams' son, to be like our main speaker on it, and like in my mind I'm just like, how the fuck do you do this? Like, he just like is constantly like attracting these people to these events and bringing people into this sphere of tether who want to help. And I'm just like, I don't know how you do it, man. And I'm just gonna stop. I'm just gonna stop questioning and stop asking and just let it flow and let it be. So he's really wonderful. Yeah.
Let him be the guy with the hair and the smile, and like push him out into the world and have him sell stuff, and then have him pull people in, and then let him believe that he's really, really smart.
I don't need to let him believe that. He knows it, and I know it as well.
I like to screw with him a little bit. He is younger than me, and you know, the modern elder was for older folks. So
yeah,
there was a little ribbing.
Yeah, I know. He's like, and now he's telling us enough with this kind of stuff.
Sorry, we'll stop talking about it.
Yeah, we'll stop talking about it. We'll move on. So I did my test this morning, and so I'm going to preface this with like a couple of things, right? So I was actually struggling to do this because like I wanted to perform at doing the Enneagram, and I'll let you. I'm going to let you kind of guess. Let's see.
Okay. Okay. 3.
Okay. Right. So number right. So I was like trying to perform at like doing this, and then I sort of went into this whole thing about like, wait, is this what is like objectively true, or what I think is true, or like how am I supposed to answer? Because like there were some questions, especially around things where it's like I know people perceive me this way, but then I feel this way about myself, and it's at odds with that piece. So I had a bit of trouble actually like answering it and trying to feel like I'm like, okay, am I answering this correct? There was things that just like, you know, rattle right off where you're just like, oh yeah, that's me. But then there is this like, there's this piece to it where you're like, wait, am I answering what is like objectively true that I know other people think is true of me? Or am I answering what I feel, right? So I am a 3 wing 4 is my, I think, Enneagram. And there was also, that's what they said. They say you're most likely a type 3. Taking wings into account, you seem to be a 3 wing 4. And then the second one would be a 3 wing 2. And I also went, and then I started like reading in all of these things. And there was, you know, definitely stuff that kind of hit home. And I have my results up here. That's why I'm just like, I'm looking at them and flipping through pages right now.
I have a question.
But anyways, yeah, there's my type. So let's just drop in there.
What was the second highest score? So if your highest score was for a 3, what was the second highest score? What number?
The type 1.
Okay. And then what?
Type 4.
Okay, and was 1 and 4 pretty close?
It was 11.3. Then that was my type 3.
Yep.
Then type 1 was 10.3. And then type 4 was 10.
Okay. So 1 and 4 were pretty well balanced.
1 and 4, yes. And then type 6 is like 9.7. And then I have a couple of others that are in the 9 range as well. And then I'm 3 wing 4 was like 16.3, and then 3 wing 2 was 16. And when I did the test 3 weeks ago, I think when Addison was actually in Baja with you, I think I was at 3 wing 2. So anyways, I'm just going to let you start to like psychoanalyze me and drop into my brain. And I can't wait. I love free therapy more than anything. And I like people telling me things that I don't know about myself and just pulling things out of my brain. So I'm a totally open book. So let's do this.
Do you have any significant loss from childhood in your past?
From childhood.
Or like teens, you know, anywhere in your adolescence to early age.
I don't have like I mean, I lost one of my best friends at 30. And that was kind of like the start of like kind of my breakdown and then building back up to build Tether. That was a very formative moment in my life. When I was in my teens, we lost my cousin Danielle to a drug addiction. I wasn't close with her though. She was like a lot older than me and was kind of like, you know, not really in my sphere. But I had my grandparents through my teens. And I wouldn't say that I had like a a monumental like loss, not like the loss of a parent or a sibling or like a grandparent that I was particularly close with, but I did have a significant loss when I was 30, and that was like one of my best friends, and that was a really devastating blow for me.
First, sorry to hear that.
Thank
And
you.
second, was your natural instinct after working through that to then go do something for the world, as far as kind of in some kind of way to make sure that that wasn't just a loss that was useless? Yeah. And that was your first instinct?
My first instinct was, no, I went through a really dark, severe, like suicidal depression period.
Yeah, after the work that you did.
And then after that, I went on a men's retreat in April so this was in January 2018. January 2018 was just dark up until about like November, December. It was just like not a good time in my life. And then I went on a retreat in April 2019, a men's retreat down in Massachusetts. And I had like a really profound experience. And this was also like combined with like my own dabbling in like, with psychedelics and plant medicines and like, journeying like, with hypnotherapy and things like that. So I did a lot of experimental. I basically did anything and everything that I could do to, regain some sense of stability in my life. And then it was like that retreat in April, I went on this retreat and came back, and I had this really profound heart-opening experience there. And then I came back on a Monday and I quit my job on the Wednesday. And then, I'd say like a month later, I was in Asia, in like Bali and Thailand. And then I kind of spent the summer doing, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do in this world. And then I had the idea for Tether in like September of 2019 and started the company around October.
Wow. Okay. So what I would be looking for when I'm kind of exploring the Enneagram is, how does this person handle pain? Where do they go with pain when pain comes? And you went intensely deep, sounds like. And so...
And I'm exhausted right now, to be honest.
Yeah. So would you say you're an intense guy?
Yes.
Okay, so this is where the Enneagram gets into weird, wacky places, which is like, you could be a sexual, social, or self-preserving type of 3. Okay. I look at them like this: when you're unhealthy, there's subtypes, and we're all 3. We want to self-preserve. We want to go to our apartment or our home and kind of get nooked up and eat right or work out or do the things that are self-preserving. Mm-hmm. Every one of us wants to connect at some level on some kind of spectrum. And we all have a certain amount of intensity. But it sounds like you're like, probably your top one is intensity. And we just call that sexual because sex is intense. And, we can do, like you said in the beginning of this conversation, ask me anything. I can go deep. Well, a lot of people would not do that, but a sexual type would. They're like, let's just go there, let's jump in the bed.
I knew I was going to enjoy this.
So when we're unhealthy, they look spread out. So for me, I'm a sexual 4. I would have, in my early 20s, tried to take every conversation to a depth that was not normal for conversations, because that was my safe ground. So you take people to your turf. I'm going to take you to my turf. Let's just get deep. I'll make you uncomfortable. And now I have the upper hand. Yeah. So I was constantly operating out of that intensity. A social type is probably going to be more concerned about that person because they're concerned about the group dynamics. They're concerned about how they interact with the group, where I'm going to be more concerned about how do I interact with Matt. If I'm at a party, I might lock in and talk with you for an hour, while the social type is jumping around. And the self-preserving type doesn't even really want to be at the party often.
Right.
So when we get healthier, they start getting closer together. And And when we really get healthy, we don't even know what we are sometimes. We don't know what's dominant because they're just starting to blend and they're starting to integrate in a really kind of copacetic way where they dance together. And that's a beautiful thing. So when I'm hearing how you reacted to pain, which is probably how I'd react to pain. I'd start reading the books, I'd go on the retreat, I would jump into more therapy, I'd reach out to friends, and I'd take a deep dive because I'm intense.
Yeah.
Instead of being a self-preserver, which I might just stay inside for really long periods of time and try to just figure it out myself. So that's maybe the subtype that you are. So I'll guess. As far as your wings, you're pretty balanced. With the 1 and the 4, you kind of have numbers on both sides of the 3. And that might mean that you just are kind of a jack of all trades. You can do a little of the head stuff, you can do a little of the heart stuff, and you can do a little of the gut stuff. And so I'm not surprised that it's like you could be a 3-wing 2 or you could be a 3-wing 4, but the wings are always on one or the other side.
Okay.
They're just, they're there, and if you were a heavy 3-wing 2, it would just mean that you have not balanced yourself out with a lot of the head stuff, because there's 3 categories: head, heart, and gut. 2, 3s, and 4s are heart. 5, 6s, and 7s are head, and then 8, 9s, and 1s are gut.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Is there a follow-up question on?
Yeah.
I love that one.
Do. I actually do. So are you familiar with like, what is it? It's like a body graph. It's like it's not the gene key, but it's I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's a body graph that basically shows like kind of how you make decisions, right? And it tells you all of these different pieces. Human design, that's the name of it. Are you familiar with human design?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. So like I have my spleen is like very much directly connected to my heart, which is very much connected to my head. And so I have like this gut feeling that runs through my heart where I have to sort of like check and make sure that this, aligns with what I, with what, not even with what I need, but what I believe is right. And that's how I make decisions, right? So it's very, very much gut based. And so the idea of like being on the more intuitive side, like I don't make decisions based on necessarily like extensive research or like extensive digging. Like I'll do a little bit of digging and then I'm just like, I kind of feel like doing this, right? Like this is what I trust. So there is that gut thing, but I didn't realize that the 3 was like more heart, because that kind of confused me when you said that, because I feel like I spend so much time like in my own head.
We all do. We all spend time in our gut. We all spend time in our heart.
Right.
The heart people know their feelings and their desires and their passions more than most other groups.
Okay.
So it would not surprise me that you make decisions like a gun shooter. Like it's easier for you to make decisions because you're more connected to what you want and what your passions and desires are. So if you asked a 9, I have a friend who's a 9 who's probably listening right now. When he first took the Enneagram, he wasn't surprised that a 9 would be, their sin is sloth. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they're really slow to their own emotions, passions, and desires. They can talk forever about wanting to do a certain thing, but they don't just shoot. They talk about it a lot because it takes them a long time to really formulate a plan, but to even identify what they really want and is that okay?
Yes.
Takes them a really long time. So most people would look at them and say they're lazy, but the sloth component of it, that's sin, because the Enneagram's based on the 7 deadly sins plus 2, is that they just don't gauge that emotion like a heart person would. Where the heart person is quick to go like, oh, this is what I'm feeling, I'm going to react on it. And with all of these numbers, there's a certain upper hand each one has. For a 4, because I'm in that heart center, I am the most likely out of the heart people, out of the 2, 3, and 4, to overdo emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So my emotion can rule everything, where a 3 is going to take emotion and make it work. And a 2 is going to repress their emotion to take care of somebody else. They get their worth from taking care of people. 3s get their worth from doing work, and 4s get their worth from how special and unique they are.
Right. Okay. Now I'm starting to see.
But we're using all 3 all the time.
Right. No. And like, but that's interesting because like with my wing 3 and wing 2, right? Like, it's because I do have that, desire to feel special, to like, I mean, I think anyone who starts a company has a desire to feel special in some way, shape, or form. Like there is a desire to be seen, a desire to be accepted, a desire to be validated. I don't think that you really decide to make that, you don't make that decision without wanting some kind of a validation from doing it. And then on the other side of things, it's like I am very concerned about what other people need and what I can do for them. And also I'll often try and like really like be like, no, let me help you. Like you can tell me what you're feeling and what you need and all of that kind of stuff. Like I can go there, I can hold space. And sometimes I'm like, why won't you let me hold space for you? Come on, just like let it out, right? Like that. And that.
Yeah, it's a very 2 thing to do.
Yeah, that can be like the overside of that piece. But like, it's interesting. Like, so you were saying that the three part, it's like, it's very much like, getting things done. Getting work done?
So when you were saying that there's a certain level of affirmation or attention you need, we all need that, and we're supposed to get it. The heart people want it the most, or they need it the most is another question, but they want it the most. And the areas in which the things they use to get it, that attention and that affirmation and the worth that they're looking so desperately for, like all of us are, is spread out with the 3 being primarily achievement and work. And again, like the 4, maybe it's artistic expression or the expression of self, how unique I am, how hard I worked at knowing who I am, and you should get that. Like these tattoos are put in a special place, and I thought it out, and I wore the shirt like this, and I have the rings here, and the hair is done a certain way, so I could seduce you a bit, so that you can go, wow, this guy has a thing. And then the 2 is if the 2 could just take care of you. Oh my gosh, they get so much worth out of being so useful to humans. But they end up shelving themselves to take care of people. When they're not healthy, they take care of the worst. The people who need to be institutionalized or taken care of by professionals, but they spend their whole life taking care of them. Because they're equally unhealthy. This one looks like a sinner, this one looks like a saint. But if I was to take away the actions and the behavior, their dysfunction's the same.
Right.
And so, yeah, you'd be most likely, if you're like a true 3 wing 2, you'd get off on people digging your achievement, and especially the kind that helps other humans.
Right.
Because it marries those 2. It's like, I'm an achiever, and I take care of people. Oh my gosh, you are a pig in shit. It's like, and you might get off on that so much that you just become, you lose yourself. And the Enneagram is really a mirror. It's a mirror that says, you have weeds and you have wheat growing together. And we have to pull as much of those weeds back, but your weeds are very specific. And I'll say it like this. I do gardening. I have a family beach house down the shore in Jersey Shore. And it's a flower garden. And each year, obviously, I come in the spring and there's weeds all over. And they're very specific weeds to that part of the island. That part of the state, that part of the country, yada, yada, yada. And I have very specific types of flowers that are growing there. These beautiful flowers that I really love because I'm a 4 and I only want certain flowers in my garden.
Yeah.
And those weeds, I have to learn over the years how to keep them at bay. But they're the same weeds. They're always going to be the same weeds. And that's like us. We have the same shit that we struggle with all the time. If you looked at my first therapy session 20 years ago with my therapist, and my therapy session yesterday, which I had, I'm dealing with the same things. I'm great, I'm shit. I'm great, I'm shit. Will people notice how gifted I am? Will people accept this show and bring me in and let me give this to the world? It's a lot about attention. It's a lot about being noticed. And so those are my weeds. And I've dug out so many weeds over the years that I'm just really pruning and kind of like getting the weeds right when they start coming out. Yeah. That's 20 years of therapy. The person who goes into therapy for the first time has their weeds and they're thick. And the Enneagram is just trying to show you right away, here's your flowers, here's your weeds. They're specific to you and 1/9 of the rest of the world. And you have to learn how to deal with them. And then it gets more specific in how to make the flowers better and how to keep the weeds at bay a bit better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like, as I, as you talk and as I sort of reflect on having done the test twice now within like a month, and being a 3-wing 2 once and then a 3-wing 4 the other time. And then you mentioning that need for attention and approval very strongly in a 4, then this like work component in the 3, and then the need to save the world or save others in the 2. I'm kind of just like, that feels complete to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like
that feels, in my world.
Yeah, that feels really complete and authentic to me. And like I think for other people that are going to watch this or like potentially watch this in the future, right? When we say like, need for attention or need to save the world or need to perform, right? Like these can be, this can be interpreted as like a negative character defect. Oh, that person always needs attention, or that person just needs to perform, or they're such a savior. But they're also like, there's both light and dark in all of these characteristics. So do you want to like drop in a little bit on that piece?
Yeah, this is 100% shadow work. If you do not know, I've said this to clients at times, and I want to be very cautious how I say this. I might not say it as direct as I usually do.
Are you okay to say it very directed? Because I do like when it's
I just don't want to. I want to be sensitive, but so as a therapist, if I can't understand the darkest sins and play them out in my head, and maybe that looks like the client who touched a kid when he was 15 and he touched an 8-year-old. If I can't get my head there, then I will probably be a disservice to that client. I need to know how dark I could possibly get. I don't need to play it out. It doesn't need to be a fantasy for me because it's not. Mm-hmm. But if I can touch that darkness and see that evil and see that shadowy stuff, I am capable of helping that client. And for all of us, we have to do that with ourselves. We have to get as close to the darkness as we can so that we can shine the light. And if we can't chew on that sin, I'm using sin because it's the Enneagram kind of uses that language. We will over-identify with our flowers. We'll over-identify with our good stuff. Mm-hmm. And when we over-identify, we live in an idealism that isn't real. It's not, we are a caricature of ourselves, and we don't become as real and grounded and as soulful or so like that idea of soil. We're not as close to the soil where things grow and live. And so when you refuse to look at the dark side, you're refusing humility. And the Enneagram is an act of humility. It should make you uncomfortable. If there's certain numbers that you look at and go, I really don't want to look at this because I think it touches too much of a nerve,
Mhm.
then that's the number you have to start exploring and make it an
Right.
ally, not an enemy. And get in touch with your sinner side, not just your saint. And
Mhm.
so much of our country has been built around, I think, um, the idea of we are strong, we are powerful, we will move forward. And so there is this expression on, expression of like peacocking, so that we don't look at the brown peacock, who also is beautiful in their own way. The male peacock, I think it's the male peacock that's the beautiful one, right? And then the female is actually the brown one. And if we looked at the brown one and went, like, they're not beautiful, we're missing the great beauty of nature. And so I love that the Enneagram allows us to look at that and just get more primal, but we have to suffer to do it. We have to look at that ugly stuff. And for me, the ugly stuff is knowing that I'm pretty self-involved. Now we all are, but I would say the four is the most self-involved, and
Right.
they're also the most likely to commit suicide because they're the most comfortable with darkness. But when I was walking through life without that knowledge, I mean, I'm likely to just step on people because I'm going to be desperate for that attention and crawl on people to get it.
Right.
Now I can sit at the pool and somebody's getting attention at the pool with the margarita in their hand, and I just pull back and just get into the hot tub and let that be, and not have to one up or jump in and get a little bit more attention.
Right. Even though there is that tug that you're feeling.
Always,
Yeah.
100%. It's constantly there. The older I get, the more work I do on myself, the less it is loud, and the more people come to you when you're not looking for it. And
Right.
so, but we're destroyed by our gifts, and I can own a room, and I
Right.
can lead a group. When I get off on that too much, I can take a group over the edge, and I could cause chaos in a group and be destructive.
Mhm. Right.
And the three can work to the bone, to exhaustion. Because if I can just achieve more, if I could just prove to the world my worth by getting this next thing done and working the 80 hours a week, then it'll finally satisfy, and you know it won't. And
Yeah.
so a three has to work on work-life balance and being honest about their limitations. The hardest thing for me with threes is that the less healthy they are, the more likely they are about being overly positive and overly linear. They're just moving forward. It's going to get done. We're going to do it this way. It's going to happen this way. And they just push, push, push. They don't even believe that something is going to come up against them. They've
Right.
repressed that. And therefore, they actually often don't look at their company as holistically as they could. And they don't look at their relationship as holistically as they could. And they have these breaking points in which they turn around and they're like, I've just been working so much that I don't have as many friends. I don't have a good work-life balance. And this shit's not paying off as much as I thought it would.
Right. Wow. Okay. Um, hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I mean, there's so much. Okay. There's so much like that's in there. And it is like for me, it has been a lot about achievement, and it has been a lot. And I don't necessarily do like 80-hour weeks, but it's like I always feel like I need to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
100-hour weeks, or it's like I'm not doing. It's like I'm constantly not doing enough, right? And I do
Yep.
have that sort of like keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, and it's almost out of like self-preservation in a lot of ways to like to keep things going sometimes. And I'll be honest, like even in the last week or so, I've noticed that I'm burned out, right?
Yep.
And we've made sure that for everybody working on Tether, that everybody's like off for the 24th to the 31st, right? But there is this, I have gotten to a point where it's like my focus isn't there. it's hard for me to understand things that I'm reading, right? It's hard for me to interpret. It's hard for me to do deep work. And, you know, but what's interesting about this like whole period for me specifically is that I have gone to a lot of depth. And I think part of the reason why it hasn't looked exactly like the 80 hours or 100-hour work weeks is because so much of the work as part of doing tether has actually been on myself, right? And that, you know, and like I guess like as I'm sitting here and talking, I didn't realize that it's like I am putting in like 100-hour weeks emotionally, right?
Sure.
Mentally and emotionally. It's just that, you know, 25% is, you know, or like, you know, 30% is like me, right? And what I need to do. And then 70% is the actual company. So just because I'm not on my computer working like for the whole time, it doesn't mean that I'm not in process, because my body and my state and my being feels like it's on, feels like it is working, feels like it is chugging.
One of the beauties of what you and I have done, we maybe without knowing it, maybe with knowing it, hijack the system.
Okay.
But we could still screw it up. So if I'm a self-involved human and I'm going to be a healthy 4, what would I do? I'd create for my life a world in which I help other people to balance out this over self-involvement. I help people for a living so that it balances out. If you're a workaholic, I'm not saying you are, but let's just say, you know, as a 3, you have a propensity to be a workaholic. If you lean towards a company or a mission that's health oriented, emotional health oriented, you're at least hedging yourself in a bit so that you don't totally combust. And this is just the creative use of your Enneagram number. It's like a lot of people who do know their Enneagram numbers well their purpose will align with, you know, your why will align with a how and a what that keep you from blowing up. And so tether is actually a great way for a 3 to stay tethered to the ground and not leave themselves totally spent and their guts out on the ground because of all the work they've done. And if you're smart, then you build your team with people who are going to identify that and call you out on it. Where most industries are not going to do that. Most industries are going to take as much as they can take from you and exacerbate all of that energy you have and grind you into the ground. Because you're a 3, it's like, oh my gosh, instinctively they know this person's going to work their ass off until they're dead. And if you're a 3-wing 2, you're going to serve all the people in a company until they've sucked all the marrow out of you and you're empty bones. But if you tie yourself to a company with a good mission, you at least can save yourself the possibility, if you build a good infrastructure there and a good core group, of not doing that. And so for me, gravitating towards therapy was kicking and screaming, because we're not talking about me all the time. But at the same time as I found a way to be me within therapy, which is pretty self-referential, even as I've told you here. Because that works for me, because I do think about myself and the narrative of me plays out a lot. So if I'm talking to you about you, I can easily pick up like, oh, I'm a gardener and there's weeds and there's flowers and boom, because I get to just build my narrative, which serves my 4-ness.
But it sounds like that's also where you're most comfortable making reference from, right? Because it is also what you know best. So it makes sense. It's not you're not going up into something esoteric. It's like that, because it's so well investigated, is very concrete, and you feel the most comfortable making reference from that point, because you're like, if there's one thing that I know in this world, it's me, right? And it's like, I mean, it's funny because like I've always wanted to make a t-shirt for myself that says I'm not much, but I'm all I think about, right? and like I want to sell those online at some point one day. It's like I love that. It's like it's exactly, and I do the same thing. Like
True.
I make reference to other people through what's going on in my world or through what I've processed in my own head, and I'll say, and then I often worry. It's like, wait, am I just being like selfish or like self, am I just being like narcissistic by doing this, or you know what I mean, something like that? But it is where I spend most of my time, is in self-reflection and self-evaluation. And so as a result, it is, I guess, and I'm sort of realizing this through our conversation, it is what I know best. And so as a result, maybe it's just like I'm drawing reference from that because it is, you know, as I said, it's my domain of expertise that I think a lot about.
And this is where I take you back to the heart part. The heart people know themselves really well, but they're no less narcissistic than anyone else. I'm just admitting my narcissism because I'm a 4 and I want to be authentic and original, and I want to share what I do know about me.
Yeah.
But the 7 who is an enthusiast who runs anytime pain comes, and they run off to another country, or they buy another house, or they buy a new outfit or a new wardrobe, is just as narcissistic. It just doesn't look the same as somebody who's clearly narcissistic.
Or who volunteers that they're
volunteers like, it's me, I'm the one.
Yeah.
But even that is some kind of like a call to attention. It's, look at me, I'm the most narcissistic. I need the attention. But the 7 has absorbed themselves in themselves so much that they need to go on this journey somewhere else and leave all that they just established behind,
right,
to go off to this other thing, fucking everybody over that was left in their wake. And the 9, who's constantly thinking about the career that they're going to build and talking about it, is just as narcissistic because they're constantly in their own little cycle and their hamster wheel of like, will they do this thing or are they just going to talk about it? And the 1 who is a perfectionist, who's constantly worried about doing things wrong and making mistakes, is just as narcissistic. It's like, what does it say about them? It says that they're so concentrated on their performance that if they get this step wrong, that you will think them unworthy of love. It's just, we're all thinking about ourselves all the time. A lot of us just don't know it. The heart people do.
Right.
And the more healthy you are, the more healthy you have a view of what kind of level of attention you are giving to yourself. And so that's the necessary suffering that you have to go through in self-reflection, is let me take a good, like, Predator or Terminator examination of this with the red things coming up and go,
a good Terminator.
And that's the Enneagram. The Enneagram is just constantly telling you you're jacked. And the healthier you get, the more nuanced you can see that jackedness, but the more freedom you get, because this is in line with meditation, where you're just going, I've got to be kind to myself. Yeah, I want attention right now. It's not wrong. It's not a moral issue. Mm-hmm. It's just how I'm wired. How I react to that is where it becomes right or wrong.
Right. And that resonates a lot with me. I mean, and a lot of the work that I've done over the years, I mean, I've done shadow work. I've done, obviously, when you get into the realm of like the psychedelics and like, you know, the entheogens, like that, like, you know, that is like a
deep dive.
Yeah, that's the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole that you're dropping down, and it is an intensity, and you identify that. It's like, I do seek and crave intense experiences, right? And intense feeling states as well, because that helps me like kind of like move through these different pieces. So but the work that I'm most, I would say, like consistent in, which is like, in all honesty, is just a practice of sitting with myself, right? And where I've gotten to is, before I would like really, you know, like as like a person who's like, you know, bullied a lot, you know, as a kid. And then, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, I'm sorry. And it's like, you know, yeah, it
brought us here.
I know. Yeah, exactly. but what's so interesting is like in the work that and you talked about this, where it's like what you were saying about noticing that you need attention is you're not attaching to a story to it, right? And I think like in the work that I do most consistently, and what I've been trying to do most consistently, is start to detach story from, detach meaning or detach origin or any of these pieces from what it is that I'm actually feeling. Like, it's like, oh, I'm feeling this way because I was bullied. My parents were like this. This happened to me when I was a kid. Da, 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 as opposed to, I'm feeling this way. And that's it. Right. And because when you're attaching story to it, then it's a puzzle and a problem that needs to be solved, as opposed to a feeling that just needs to be felt and investigated. And that's kind of, what we ascribe to within Tether a little, to a large degree, is like, let's drop the whole story of why this happened, why this was here, and let's just allow ourselves to actually drop in and feel what it is that's going on.
Yeah, I'm torn on that one because I don't, and that would probably require more explanation of what you mean by that. But I don't mind in a moment when let's just say I'm in a bar and a guy is looking at me in a way that makes me feel threatened, and I'm starting to puff up. And I'm feeling that part of myself go, I want to fuck this dude up for looking at me the wrong way. Now he's probably not even looking at me for any other reason than there's a woman behind me or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the narrative that's playing out is the old narrative of, I'm a target and you're going to take me out. But now I've been working out for 20 years and I could take you out.
Right.
I don't mind attaching that narrative if that narrative says, dude, your narrative is an old narrative. You can pull back right now, because that guy has no idea whether you're a vulnerable target or not. And your puffing up is totally insecure and about a reaction to a thing that happened when you were 14, not when you're 42. And to me, I kind of need a little bit of that narrative there to connect to. And so I think we're probably saying the same thing. But, a lot of people can't even identify the emotion. So I think that's where the person needs to go, what am I feeling right now? And maybe because I do this for a living and because I've done a lot of work on myself, the emotion, the narrative, the thing I want to do to that person in reaction to the narrative and the emotion are all coming in at one time. And I can kind of matrix it and start doing the getting around the bullets and go, all right, I'm going to have another drink and then get the hell out of here, because this is just an unsafe place for me and an unsafe place for that person who has no idea what happened in my past.
So there's I think we have 7 minutes left or something like that. We're going to take the whole hour, by the way. I know your sessions are only 45 minutes from your website, but we're going to take you for the whole hour.
Does that mean I could charge you also an extra fee?
Well, just for the 15 minutes. I thought the 45 was already baked in.
Me.
Yeah, you take the 15, man. You need it.
It's a tip.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I've noticed is and this is probably an entirely other conversation, right? Let's be real. He was looking at me this far. Yeah. This is just let's be real. That's funny.
Narcissism goes a hell of a long way for that guy.
So there is one of the things that's kind of I've been working out over this past year and a half, I would say, is this victim complex that I've had since I was a very little kid. I know where it comes from: bullying, trying to get attention from my parents, right? And not getting it as much as I wanted to for achievement. So being all right, well, if I'm not going to get it for achievement, and achievement's just kind of expected, then I'm going to get it for, being fucked up, and you know what I mean? All of this kind of stuff, and look at me, and this is hurting me. And what I've realized in the last little while is how how unhealthy and how those things impact my relationships with my, with my family, with friends, with business colleagues, and how in the moments of stress and panic and anxiety, I default to that wounded child behavior, right?
Yep.
And this has been something that's been really difficult for me, because what I realized was that it was like my number one coping mechanism, like my number one thing that I did to survive in life was like, now I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, and then you're like, well then, but like, how am I supposed to get attention and approval if I don't have this complex and I'm not constantly pulling for it? And so what's sort of like in like a couple minutes, I know this is a bit tough to do, and I probably shouldn't have unlocked this box right at this moment. But
I don't even know what the question is yet.
No, I know it. It's like, but like when you have this sort of like, when you identify that maladaptive thing that you do, and it's like all of a sudden that is taken away from you, right? It leaves a void, and I'm and I'm still working through like kind of like what like I know how I don't want to behave right now, but then I don't have the mental wiring yet to behave in the way that I do want. So that gap is really awkward. How do you navigate that gap kind of thing? Because I'm sure you've gone there too, where you realize like, oh, this shit's not working for me anymore.
The gap is just going to remain till one of the things you have to do is realize the gap is going to be there till you die. It'll be a smaller gap, but the gap to perfection emotionally is death. Like when you die is the only time that you will be free of your weeds. So I'll give a brief story. So I'm not going to speak to yours. I'll speak to mine, because we were just speaking about the moment in the bar. The moment in the bar. The reason I got therapy is I just had a few too many moments where we all had to leave the bar because I did something because I thought somebody was looking at me, or somebody bumped me, or somebody did something to agitate me, which took me back to this old narrative that I'm abusable and you can take advantage of me. And so the tough guy, I'm not going to take shit from anybody, I'll throw the first punch before you even knew that it was going to happen because you started a little thing. I got off on that. I got off on the narrative of it. My friends all have stories of me giving them the jacket and then going into the middle of the thing to throw a fist. And it's not because I was that tough. Like, I picked my spots where I could probably win. I didn't take on the biggest guys, or if I did when there was this kind of buffer between us and I could run quick. But I remember being in Boston once with a group of friends, dancing with a beautiful woman, and this dude just didn't like me dancing with a beautiful woman, as dudes often don't like you dancing with a beautiful woman. And started bumping me, and I turned around and there was the face-off. And I walked away, and I went into a booth by the dance floor, and I wept. I just wept, because I knew I had given up a huge component of that persona that I was trying to put out there, which was, you can't fuck with me. I will take you out before you take me out. And to give that up was so hard in that moment. That was 17, 18 years ago. I can guarantee you in the next year, I will have 2 moments, probably to 3, in which I have to sit in the booth and not take on the guy who bumps because he's drunk and has some reason to take on the dude with the tattoos, or take on the guy who's talking to a woman that he wants to talk to. It's going to happen. It's going to happen that I get bumped. I live in New York City. It's just we're on top of each other. There's going to be a moment which I could go to a place I shouldn't, and I have to walk into the booth and just diminish my constraint on being powerful. And know that the power of walking away, this is like classic, if you just walk away, that's powerful. But that is the daily practice for me of being conscious that the power is in keeping my cool and being grounded. And I will be doing that the rest of my life. At 76, somebody's going to bump me on the street, and I'm going to take it as a rejection of my place in this world and my right to be in this world as I was kind of pushed out in high school. And I'm going to want to react. And I have to practice the art of putting down my sword and only taking out my sword to cut off the fat of my clients and my friends and my family who need to get healthy, and I can give them love, which makes them healthy. And that will never stop because I'm feisty as fuck, and I'm wired to get in the mix and be intensity is just so in me. And so I'm going to have to contend with that for the rest of my life. So the gap is a huge gap, and it ain't going anywhere. It's just going to get smaller.
And let's wrap
scene.
it. And let's wrap it on that. Absolutely. Man,
All
this
right,
was
man.
an absolute pleasure. I loved every minute of this. I hope you had some fun today.
It was awesome.
And you know, I know we're going to be floating in and out of each other's existence now. We got Addison as our mutual connecting point. I love this. I loved having you on, man. Thank you so much for being here with us and doing this with me today. This is a lot of fun.
Keep doing the good work, man. I love it. Love what you guys are doing.
You too. Have a great day, and thank you everyone who tuned into this. And please come back next time when we'll do this again with another wonderful and interesting person. That was Drew Newkirk. Thank you so much for joining in today, and I hope everyone has a great day. All the best.